Hi, Studio Recapped here. Today, we're going to talk about a movie called The Mask, which falls under the action and drama genres. Spoiler alert is on, watch out and take care. So, you want to wait or hit subscribe right now? The movie begins with a wooden mask being discovered in a river. Then we're introduced to a man named Stanley Ipkiss, a shy banker living an ordinary life who constantly feels dissatisfied with it. Stanley's colleague and friend, a man named Charlie Schumacher, invites him to a club to attend an important party. A girl named Tina Carlisle enters the bank. She's a singer who's being pressured by gangsters. Following orders from Dorian Tyrell, a gangster aiming to take control of the city, Tina goes to the bank. The moment Stanley sees Tina, he falls for her but doesn't show it. Pretending to open a new account, Tina secretly films the bank and takes the footage back to Dorian. Stanley rents a beat-up car and heads to the club, but the bouncer refuses to let him in. He spots Tina attending the same event, arriving in a luxurious car. Frustrated and upset, Stanley stops by a riverside where something human-shaped in the water catches his attention. When he enters the river, he accidentally finds a wooden mask. Stanley returns home and plays with his loyal dog Milo. While watching TV, he sees a program where an author talks about how everyone wears a figurative mask in their lives. Curious, Stanley picks up the mask and puts it on. At that moment, something extraordinary happens. Stanley transforms into the mask, a magical version of himself that turns him into a completely different person. The mask heads out and starts doing bizarre things. He gets into a fight with some criminals, enjoys his newfound power, and spends some time having fun at the club. The next morning, he's awakened by the doorbell. Detective Lieutenant Calloway questions Stanley about the events of the previous night. Stanley denies knowing anything, even though all the chaos was caused by the mask. That's when Stanley realizes the mask's magical power. The detective continues his search for the mask's identity. Meanwhile, Stanley, still infatuated with Tina, talks about her with Charlie. Charlie suggests that Stanley should focus on someone more suitable, like a girl named Peggy Brandt. Peggy is a journalist looking for sensational stories, and she asks Stanley some questions. Previously, Peggy had published one of Stanley's letters in the newspaper and tells him she thinks he's a gentleman and a very kind person. Stanley dreams about Tina and can't stop thinking about her. He turns to the mask again and puts it on. While Dorian and his men are carrying out their plan to rob the bank, the mask shows up and takes all the money before they do. He then heads to the club. Tina is on stage singing a song. After her performance, the mask jumps on stage, dances with Tina, and creates some truly captivating scenes. By the end, they share a moment of closeness and even kiss. Dorian is also present at the club. After realizing what's happening, he and his men attack the mask. However, the mask dodges their attacks in hilarious and stylish ways. Even when he gets shot, the wounds heal instantly, showing that the mask is invincible. Meanwhile, the detective, suspecting Dorian's men of the robbery, investigates them but finds a piece of Stanley's clothing at the scene. The detective confronts Stanley, who claims he was home the whole night and that his clothing must have been stolen. However, security footage reveals that Stanley was the one behind the robbery. On the other hand, Dorian, realizing the true value of the mask, begins hunting for it. Tina visits Stanley. He claims that the mask is his friend and realizes that Tina is interested in the mask. They set up a date. Stanley then goes to see the author of the book about humans and their masks. He tries to demonstrate the mask's magical powers but fails. Finally, he decides to meet Tina without wearing the mask. Stanley shows up for the date, but the detective is tailing him. After spending some time with Tina, Stanley quickly transforms into the mask. The police chase after him and manage to catch a glimpse of the mask. However, he cleverly escapes, creating a comical scene where the mask seemingly hypnotizes all the officers into dancing with him. They all end up adoring him. Stanley hides and removes the mask but is approached by Peggy, who comes under the pretense of asking him questions. Once Peggy learns that Stanley is the mask, she informs Dorian and his gang in exchange for money, betraying Stanley. The mask falls into Dorian's hands, transforming him into a dark and terrifying version of the mask. Dorian's gang captures Stanley to turn him over to the police. They then return to Stanley's house and steal all the money from the bank robbery. However, Milo witnesses everything and follows them. Stanley is arrested and thrown in jail. While there, he is startled by Milo's barking. Tina visits him and tells him, "You've treated me better than anyone else. I'll disappear for a while and wait for you." After leaving, Tina is pursued and captured by Dorian's men. Milo struggles to reach Stanley. The clever dog steals the keys from a police officer's pocket, allowing Stanley to escape. He teams up with the detective and heads to the club. Meanwhile, Dorian buys new clothes for Tina to prepare her for the big event that night. Dorian and his gang attack the club. He ties Tina to a time bomb as part of his revenge plan. Previously, Dorian had been threatened and fired by his boss, and now he seeks to get even. Tina cleverly tells Dorian that she wants to kiss him one last time without the mask. When Dorian complies, Tina knocks the mask off his face and throws it aside. Milo grabs the mask and puts it on, transforming into an adorable yet powerful dog version of the mask. Meanwhile, Stanley fights Dorian's men and manages to reach Tina. Milo delivers the mask to Stanley, who puts it on and becomes the mask once again. With his cartoonish arsenal of weapons, he terrifies Dorian's gang and saves Tina. In a thrilling moment, the mask swallows the ticking bomb just as it's about to explode, safely containing the blast inside himself. He then defeats Dorian by sucking him into a whirlpool, ending his reign of terror. The detective initially intends to arrest Stanley, but his superior claims that the mask was actually Dorian. Stanley is hailed as a hero by the public. In the final scene, Stanley shares a romantic moment with Tina and throws the mask back into the river, letting go of its power.